For the last 22 years, Crave Dog has been one of Portland's primary sources for locally based band merchandising. It's a one-stop shop for promo, apparel, and more, and it turns out they're major fans of metal. This is Gritty Birds. My name is Jenny Wren-Stotrup. I'm an artist, producer, and podcaster based out of Portland, Oregon. Every week, I share a new story straight from the voice of a successful artist or industry professional. And this is the first of a new feature of interviews, online and uncut. Todd Crosby and Jonny Galyon partnered up for 2016's Heshfest. In a two-part online special, I'm sharing candid conversations with the men behind the vision of one of the best metal festivals in the world, right here in Portland, Oregon. Todd Crosby is the founder of Portland's Crave Dog. Jonny Galyon runs American Icon. Both love and breathe metal. They built up a festival featuring a lineup that is unheard of for rooms with 500 caps, with Deafheaven, Acid and Red Fang, and a who's who of Portland's standout metal scene, which is arguably one of the best in the nation. We'll be touching base with Todd in the next part, which comes out on Friday. But first, let's get the scoop on music from the man himself, Jonny Galyon.
A great piece of history just got lost, ladies and gentlemen. Our previous interview was not recorded, but we have
technical difficulties.
we have more great art.
We've been talking about Dead Moon, and we've been talking about the first time that you ever fell in love with Uncle Acid. And we were talking about Deafheaven and how Deafheaven are like, this is the last time you'll ever be able to see them in a small club, and how you've been, it's a sound that are very innovative with their sound, but you haven't necessarily, it wasn't your first jump. And you were talking a lot about how you've been working with some of these bands for 5 years. So that's kind of a really short catch up of what was happening.
I started small, and I've grown gradually through, connecting with these people, booking shows, and most of these guys in these bands are my friends. I know them on a personal level before I ever book their band. So that's what kind of makes it cool, and I think people like working with me. It's because it's kind of like just a big party. This is how it feels like, and I've been, like I said earlier, I've been working on this Uncle Acid show for like 5 years. Before they have ever played their first show, I had been emailing them. And I almost, all three of the headliners, I feel, will not be able to play 500 capacity clubs anymore, So, like, what Northwest Heshfest is like, I try to get a band that is too big to actually play in that venue that it should be like. So where you would see Deafheaven or Red Fang or Uncle Acid like a year from now in a 900-person capacity venue, it's like your last chance to be able to see them like up close and personal.
So how long does it take you to work on this particular show? Like, you ended last year, you work on the South by Southwest sets, the black metal...
Heavy metal parking lot.
Sorry.
No problem.
And so you have like a couple events throughout the year, and then you do promotions, putting a lot of movement together between bands, a lot between Portland and Austin.
Right.
And so when did you start like some of the aspects of this particular festival for this year?
I think I thought about it about 3 years ago. Like, I wanted to expand my brand. So I was like, how do I do that? Because Austin had so many events that it felt like it was going to be hard to get my name out there bigger, right? So I wanted to expand the brand, expand the network, and like showcase bands, basically, which is something that South by Southwest was originally doing for many years, is showcasing smaller bands, but later on it's kind of more about showcasing the already established bands. So when you're putting together one of these events, I mean, it might be like a year in planning, a year and a half. So one thing that I do is, like, say I use a band during Northwest Heshfest, I might ask one of those particular bands to play my next show in Austin. So you start getting stuff set up for everything at least a year out in planning, if not more. And with Uncle Acid, I've been working on that show for 4 to 5 years, basically, to try to finally get them. And what's weird is I've known John, the drummer of Red Fang, for 20 years. I met him, I think, the first day he moved to town, and we had a mutual friend named Charlie Finch who lived in Knoxville, but John and Charlie Finch had actually went to high school together in North Carolina. So it's just really strange. Like, I met the guys from the American Sharks who are playing with them and have the same agency as them. Those guys have been my buddies for about 4 years now, and I started working with them and booking little small shows with them. And as they started to get bigger, they got signed to an agency. Well, I had worked with them before, so then I worked with them again, but contractually through their agent, and then I did a good job on the show, and then all of a sudden I get to work with bigger bands on that agency, you know, which are like the Sword, Red Fang, all the way up to like Paul McCartney. You know, it's like crazy, you know, the roster some of these guys have. So with it, it's about starting small and just kind of growing it out gradually. So Portland, you know, was like a natural progression, I think.
Absolutely. So then Crave Dog is a co-presenter of this and you've been working with Todd. How did that partnership come about?
The partnership with Todd came about because he had been working as like co-promoter on Hover Fest, and through Nathan Carson, the drummer of Witch Mountain, introduced me to Todd because he said that, hey, you know, Hoverfest is not going to happen this year. Todd really liked what you did with Heshfest last year. He kind of wants to like co-promote another festival, but instead of just doing it all himself and it being like another event that, you know, with like a similar type of music, let's just combine our efforts and combine our resources and expand what we're both doing through one another quicker, you know, and bigger.
Let's take a quick pause and listen to Flies from Red Fang. Their latest album comes out on October 14th. That was Flies from Red Fang. Let's get back to Jonny.
So, I've literally had one phone conversation with Todd. He trusted me enough in what he had seen my work in the past to, like, invest a substantial sum of money in the event. And I said, hey, man, like, I'll split it all 50-50 with you, all profits and losses, and we'll, like, try to throw an awesome party. And he's in the music industry with, like, making posters and T-shirts and, like, CDs, so, like, kind of band starter packs, basically, to go on the road, and he's been doing it in that region for, like, 20 years. So I thought, man, this is, like, totally relative, small company that's, like, you know who the face of the company is, locally owned, grassroots. So I was like, man, this is like perfect, And it's good, man, because it's like to do all this by yourself, which I basically run it all by myself.
I did that once.
Yeah, and I'm running a vintage clothing company, a record label, and these multiple festivals all by myself, basically with no money other than the money I have in my pocket,
Right.
Like, so it's like, it's always on this, like, shoestring budget, but, like, not like a shoestring budget per se, but, like, it all needs to work out, or I have to, like, go into my pocket. There's not some big corporate sponsor that's paying for it,
So there's a lot of conversation, I guess, to bring that up is that right now the question is of the concept of saying that the festivals are dying because they have been run so badly. Like in many ways, it's like being able to work with a festival. And this was a quote from TJ Anarino. He's the sponsorship person for Goose Island Brewing. And I interviewed him in Chicago a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago now, I guess. And he was talking about how it makes sense for sponsors to want to work with festivals because you are paying for a ticket and you're investing in it. But sometimes with those corporate ties, it does mean that, like, where does the money actually go, and how do the festivals like keep going? And have you noticed anything in your 3 years, your last few years, about whether that is becoming more or less sustainable?
I think it's becoming less sustainable for the mega festivals.
Right.
Because what happened is it was just a mass oversaturation of the market, and so many festivals popped up, and it was super strong. Everything was selling out. Bonnaroo was selling out. Coachella's selling out. Sasquatch is selling out. Like, it's just like coming through in floods. And corporate sponsors want to jump on board because they're getting 25, 30, 75,000 people per day. But, I mean, people only can afford so much,
Yeah.
And then once you get these corporate sponsors involved, giving you these big paychecks, if they are, I don't know. That's a myth to me. I mean, I think you're starting to have to get to the 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 where they're seeing real numbers. But to get those real numbers, you have to book a huge mainstream artist that might jeopardize the integrity or your core fan base,
Right.
So the festival actually becomes something that it started out to not want to be,
Yeah. And that
And
happens in songwriting too. I was reading, there's a lady who's going to be on the show in the spring, and she's a songwriter, like a songwriter of songwriters. And she was
right,
talking about the song. There was an artist that she'd worked with a few years ago, and they wanted to use the name Michael in it, but the label was like, that's not going to work. And it was right when Hey There Delilah came out. I mean,
right,
totally different scene, but the labels were like, that's never going to work. Don't have anyone's name in it. That's a mistake. You know what I mean? And like, but
right.
because of the fact that she was being sponsored by them, like they had final say. And I think that can happen too with those large festivals.
Absolutely. It's like you're not in control of your own artwork anymore, It's like you paint this, masterpiece, and then all of a sudden people start to gravitate towards it, but then these corporate sponsors or these other people in control, money people, they start painting over it, and then it becomes something entirely different, and people don't like it as much, so then the viewers start going away. And I think the bubbles just burst with it, with all these mega festivals. There was so many, and then all of a sudden it was like every festival had the exact same lineup. There's like no real curation to it. It's just like the lowest common denominator that's going to get like everyone out to spend a bunch of money. Well, it doesn't really make for a great experience, And I think after these people do it enough times, they just realize they don't want to spend their money on it anymore.
Yeah.
Because the tickets are overpriced. The band, and I was talking to this about with someone else. It's like you become desensitized to seeing all those bands. You never see a band's full set, So it's like, how can I enjoy a book that I don't read the first and the last chapter of because I'm trudging around in the mud to try to get to this other stage,
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of market research on it too. Like I think the New York Times just wrote a big article about how the festival market has kind of burst. And
It was this spring. Yeah, there were a few different think pieces about that whole aspect. Yeah.
But see, and I think that's a whole nother realm than what I do, though, in a way.
But at the same point, isn't that important?
It is important. It shows a more national, and I think what happens too is election years, people spend less money, honestly, because they don't know where the state of the nation's going to go. So I'm not really sure what's going on, though. I mean, the margins are so thin, and also the pay for the bands kind of had like reached this like level because of these festivals that were doing so good that these bands could like started demanding a lot of money, which they deserved to get. But then what happened is that now like it's so high of a cost to book a lot of these bands, the margins are so thin it almost doesn't make it a viable business decision,
Right.
Like with my vintage clothing company, I have to spend $1 to make $100. With
Right.
the music promotion, I have to spend $100 or maybe even $1,000 just to make $1. And it's not about making money, it's just about sustainability. You know what I'm saying? And growth. So do you have any counterpoints on what I'm saying? Because I just ramble.
No, I think that's the conversation we're having right now is just like being able to keep a festival like yours alive. And I'm with you on this. I guess the festivals that I've talked to this year, I've been working with Treefort and with Pickathon, and that was how I was associated with you guys, just because Chris and Nats helped me out a lot this year. Those are the relationships that I've built.
Correct.
And he's, because I interviewed Wimps and I interviewed Diarrhea Planet this spring.
Oh, very cool.
And then, that was a relationship that we built. And then that really built Pickathon happening. But during that same time, it's like I talked to Zale and I've had long conversations with like Eric. And I was on the board for PDX Pop Now for many years. And like we've had a lot of conversations about what it means to be able to keep festivals happening. Because like obviously we're on a nonprofit basis for PDX Pop Now and no one gets paid. There's a lot of controversy. And I've had people approach us, for example, saying like, how can you make that happen? And part of it is just because like it's the mission that's been there for like 12 years. But we do have those same issues, is like we do need to be able to share numbers, and we are very reliant upon sponsors. And that's really, really challenging when like it's getting harder to get people to go to things when there's so many events. And I've had a lot of people be like, oh, I don't like this, I'm going to create my own event. It's like, well, that's great, but it kind of is, it's frustrating sometimes when there is a fundraiser. Like there was a festival, some of the grassroots festivals in the area. There was one there's two festivals that play in August that are kind of end of season festivals, just in the woods. And both of them had their fundraiser on the same night at venues in Portland. And it was
Right.
like a bummer because it's like there is this point where we want to be able to have the community and have those crews, but it is really hard to like spread out those pieces so much. And you're right, you do have to pay $1,000 to make $1. I mean, that's one of the reasons I took a break as a performer was it was that whole aspect of like, you know, or even podcasting. I'm doing this and it feels crazy, but it's like finding new and innovative ways to like explore things.
Really curating them correctly and thinking about the event as more like a cultural, artistic experience other than just doing the event to find ways to monetize it. Those are the
Right.
people that'll fail because they're, some of those guys will be successful, but those people are like they're fighting after the same dollar, and you see, I think they run it as more of a business, and I run mine as more of a cultural experience. That
Mm-hmm.
I want to be successful financially because that leads me to being able to do another one, down the road.
Now, let's listen to another track. This is Brought to the Water from Deafheaven's 2015 release, New Bermuda.